Globalization has sharpened competition. The main challenge facing India's PSEs is how to take advantage of new resources and markets while dealing with intense and growing competition. The challenge facing governments is how to design and implement supportive policies and strategies. To elaborate this further, we have invited a panel of CMDs to discuss the topic Building Global and Business Competitiveness. I would like to invite T. Radhakrishna, Editor South ET Government, to moderate this roundtable. Over to you, Radhakrishna.
Dear viewers, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of ET Government, I welcome our guest panelists. Gentlemen, it is indeed a great pleasure to meet you and have you in today's panel discussion. CMD's Roundtable, Building Global and Business Competitiveness, part of the second edition of National PSU Summit 2021. I'm joined by eminent leaders, Mr. Rakesh Mohan Agrawal, Chairman and Managing Director of ITI Limited, Mr. Mukesh Kumar Surana, Chairman and Managing Director of Hindustan Petroleum Corporation Limited, Mr. Abhay Kumar Singh, Chairman and Managing Director of NHPC Limited, Mr. Ravinder Singh Dhillon, Chairman and Managing Director of Power Finance Corporation Limited, Mr. Sarvesh Singh, Chairman and Managing Director of Bharat Broadband Network Limited, Mr. Sanjeev Kumar Lohia, Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Indian Railway Station Development Corporation Limited. Respected guests, globalization has sharpened the competition. The main challenge facing India's public sector enterprises is how to take advantage of new resources and markets while dealing with the intense and growing competition. The challenge facing governments is to how to design and implement supportive policies and strategies and reduce growing debts. Industry and government both need to intensify their partnerships and build and strengthen competitiveness. My first question to Mr. Rakesh Mohan Agrawal, Chairman and Managing Director of ITI Limited. Sir, can you share your initial remarks on global and business competitiveness in the current scenario?
Yeah, good evening to all the viewers, all my co-panelists, and especially to Mr. Radhakrishnan, ET Government. And I'm thankful to the ET Government for inviting me in this August panel. The topic is of very relevance today when we are finding the world. It is that now there are no borders at all. World is complete a market. So we have seen in the past, globalization has taken place and Industry 4.0 have created new opportunities. But at the same time, they have disrupted many economies of the world. But in early 90s, when many of the MNCs global market were open to the country, especially in the telecom sector, they have disrupted some of the industries, including BSNL, ITI, and yes, at the same time, they have brought some very good changes as far as telecom sector is concerned. Globalization has double impact. They have disrupted the economy in the early 90s, late 90s, but at the same time, they have brought out the efficiency in the working, at least in the working of the PSUs also. So yes, the globalization in the recent past have given us a very good advantage, and our PSUs have taken to its advantage. Yes, as far as other countries are concerned, the developing countries are concerned, yes, we can find the same story which we have felt in the late 80s or the early 90s in India. So those are my initial remarks. But yes, so globalization and all the competitiveness will definitely bring in a best form us, especially from the PSUs. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mukesh Kumar Surana, welcome to the panel discussion, sir. Can I have your initial remarks on the global and business competitiveness in the current scenario, please?
Thank you very much, and thanks for inviting me to this August panel. And as far as the global competitiveness or the business competitiveness is concerned, basically it will be judged by that how a country is able to sustain the per capita growth in the GDP on a sustained basis. And it will depend on how we can provide the goods or services which gives better value on an international platform. As far as we are concerned, in the oil industry, we have got two parts of the business. One is the refining part or the upstream part. And there it was always internationally correlated because crude as a commodity and the products as a commodity, both are international products. And technologically also, it moves in tandem to ensure that you have the technologies which are used internationally. In India specifically, you started with a system where most of the companies were multinationals and they were in the business till sometime some of the companies got nationalized. But pre-74 era, there were the international companies operating in India, multinational companies were operating in India in the oil sector. Now, very often it is said that probably the downstream market is not as competitive, but there also, at least since 2008 or 9, you had enough people in the private sector also who are marketing the petroleum products. And there were part of the businesses like, let's say, lubricating oils or the other industrial products where anyway the multiple parties in public and private sectors were there. So as far as oil sector is concerned, if purely from the competitive market, if we see that the refining industry had been able to compete on the world scale, and India as a country had been exporting petroleum products, even though it may look contrary to the normal belief, but on a net basis, on all the products put together, India does export them. So our consumption is around 200 million metric ton, but we have got the capacity to produce around 225, 230 million metric ton, and we do that because normally our refineries operate at more than 100% of the capacity. But in a broader scale, in a country, whether we are competitive or not competitive, it will depend on one thing is the availability of the capital and the efficiency of deploying of the capital. Capacity of a country to adopt the technologies and the agility in adopting the technology. Third thing is the policy regime which promotes and advances that competition by having more and more players entering into certain areas of business, and the availability of the skilled manpower and the capacity of the people to innovate and adopt and constantly try to improve on them. So in all these factors, country has moved a lot, more so in the last decade or last few years. And I think India is coming to an age and where in some sector, we were definitely making a mark, let's say IT sector. I don't think there is any place where Indian IT people are not recognized. In automobile sector also country did exceedingly well. The petrochemical sector also country is making strides. Even in the refining sector, I can tell that Indian refining professionals there in all the companies in the world who do the refining. But we can do a lot more. So that's my initial.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Abhay Kumar Singh, CMD NHPC, welcome to the panel discussion, sir. Can I have your initial remarks, please?
Good evening, dear viewers and the panelists. And your question is the global business and competitiveness. You know, the government has a clear-cut vision that by 2030, we have to add around 40% of the installed capacity non-fossil fuel. And the market at the present is going in such a way, the solar power, once upon it was around 15 to 16 rupees per unit, now come down to 2 rupees. So you can just imagine the competitiveness in the power sector. Since we are dealing in the hydro, and hydro is very much importance for this grid balancing and fast ramping up, ramping down. We have seen also last year, 9 p.m., 9 minutes, net of April. So importance of the hydro is known to everyone. And to be in the competitive in the market, definitely we have to bring down all the tariff also. Because earlier it was totally cost plus basis. But now the things is changing. we have to give a lower tariff price for all this hydropower project. So the only solution is how early we can complete the project, because in the hydro, you can see the time and cost over in the average more than 50%. It's difficult to now go for the 50% time and cost overrun. So competition is there. We are working on it. Now we are a matured company, more than 45 years of experience. We know the challenges, the management, the real-time decision-making, resolving the dispute. So all these things are taking up with a full strength. And at the same time, now for the hydropower or rather any project, the portal like Pragati is there. So each of business is now improving. And because of that also, we are getting the good contractors also, good EPC contractors and suppliers, other things, so getting the good rate. The competition has gone really to the fore. And in the hydro sector, we are doing at present a lot of work with a minimum of the time and cost overrun. So competition has come, and globally it is required also, because ultimately the people want as a cheaper power, and the solar has really done a tremendous change in all the power sector. This is from my side.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Ravinder Singh Dhillon, CMD, Power Finance Corporation Limited. Welcome to the panel discussion. Can I have your initial remarks, sir, on the global and business competitiveness in the current scenario for you?
Good afternoon, everybody. India has been one of the major players in the global economy and has trading ties with all the developed nations. And India itself has a huge market, and is the spending power of the middle class is there. And the industries such as IT, pharma, textile, and leather goods we have been very competitive in the international market. So we have to replicate this for the manufacturing sector also. We have a favorable demography, and young workforce is there. And Government of India is also come up with Atmanirbhar scheme, where Make in India is promoted. So for the development of the economy, the infrastructure plays a very critical role, and power is among the most critical component of the infrastructure. India has been the third largest producer of electricity and second largest consumer of electricity. So India has jumped in the World Bank ease of doing business for getting electricity, and it has jumped from 137, which we were in 2014, and has come up to 22 in 2019. And the energy deficit scenario which we had, now we have an energy surplus scenario, where the energy deficit has reduced from 4.2% in 2014 to just 0.7% in 2019-20. And the solar power has the cost of generation for solar power has reduced from 7 rupees, which we had around 10 years back, and now it has come less than 2 rupees. So this is a very big leap which we have taken, especially with respect to solar energy. And PFC and REC have captured the business in the solar energy and is contributing in financing almost 40% of the share with respect to the power sector.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Sarvesh Singh, CMD, Bharat Broadband Networks Limited. So can I have your initial remarks on the global and business competitiveness for you in the current scenario?
My initial remarks on global and business competitiveness, my understanding is it is the ability of the nation or the organization, any entity who can create value at a competitive price. So that is the competitiveness, the global and business competitiveness I understand. And vis-a-vis competitors, it is the ability of the entity, nation, or the organization to create value. So that is to produce and deliver quality products, say goods and services at a competitive price. So there are various drivers to global competitiveness I see. One is the physical planning and the physical discipline. So how the nation or the organization, how they source their funds, where do they spend, how do they do the budgeting, and how do they control the fiscal discipline and other things. That is the major driver of the global competitiveness. Then entity which understands its priorities, raises and invest, spend judiciously within the budget, and which can add maximum value at a competitive price would be the one which will be globally competitive. From nation's point of view, you see, long-term prosperity will significantly depend on how public budget and fiscal policies are managed. Like for developing countries and all who have a lot of debt, obviously they'll have less money for the investment and to achieve the productivity levels. The other driver I see is the ethics and the corporate governance. You know, the country or organization that has a culture, say the organization which has got a culture which lays emphasis on quality, which has systems and processes that ensure quality and safety in a fair and transparent manner, and that can produce quality goods and services, that will be the other driver for the competitiveness, and they can this is how they can build the competitiveness. The quality parameter is all the more important now as the transactions are online, and it's very important for the companies to build trust, which is more important when you're doing the online transactions. In these pandemic times, we have seen that the governments and organizations which had built the digital delivery of services were better equipped to deal with the crisis. If you see in India, since we had the Jan Dhan accounts, the government's vision, we opened the Jan Dhan accounts earlier, and there's a system of Aadhaar in place. So it was possible at the time of pandemic times to directly transfer the DBT could be done. We could directly transfer the money to the account holders wherever it was required. So the digitization process should accelerate. Companies should adopt digital business models and invest in ICT development and digital skills. The other thing, the other drivers of competitiveness I see is the technology. The companies should invest in technology to improve competitiveness. Automation obviously reduces human error. It improves efficiency, improves standardization and quality. Companies need to invest in technology to improve efficiency and productivity. And the investment it can come either by doing the innovation where you can develop your own technology. It can also be by adoption of maybe the technology which has been developed by others. So, as I said, fiscal discipline, ethics and corporate governance, investment in technology, digitization, and lastly, this thing is that once you adopt the technology, you should also have the skilled manpower who can use the technology. So companies, they have to invest something on the training of employees, the upskilling and reskilling of the employees for the digital technology so that they become competitive. So I see that all these are the various drivers which will help the nation, any entity, the nation or the companies to become and achieve the global competitive and rise on the global competitive and the business competitive index. So this is my initial take on that.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Mr. Sanjeev Kumar Lohia, MD and CEO, welcome to panel discussion. Your initial remarks, please, sir.
Thank you. I think my area of work is entirely different from what all my panelists have been dealing. Station development is something which is quite new as far as this country is concerned, and it's a very complicated task involving railways, urban development, urban transport, multimodal integration, green building concepts. You put everything, it's like a mini smart city in itself, and we have to do it on public-private partnership. So essentially, our job is to make money out of air and convert station at par with airports. So when we have to make money out of air, so essentially we are, and on PPP, so we are looking for investments, as Mr. Surana pointed out, the cost of capital. So we are looking for investors from abroad, as well as India, who can come and invest. These are long gestation periods. So whatever bidding we have had for our stations, we have good competition from international funds also, as well as Indian players. So we are promoting global participation as far as station development is concerned. We are also looking that in future, as Indian Railway Station Development Corporation, we are also able to take up projects abroad, because this stationary development mainly has happened in Europe and Japan, Hong Kong, Singapore, etc. But there are many countries which are railways, and they are looking for transforming their cities and the railways through the stationary development. So we looking forward to those opportunities when we have sufficient experience in India. We have completed two important projects in the country. The first PPP project in Bhopal, which has been completed, just awaiting to be inaugurated. The second project is in Gandhinagar, Gujarat, capital, where for the first time in the history of the country, we have constructed a 318-room 5-star hotel on top of tracks. So those are landmark projects for the first time in the government sector on a management contract basis. So we have created systems to have good public-private partnership and participation from international firms. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. So my second question to Mr. Rakesh Mohan Agarwal. Sir, the turnaround story of ITI Limited, set up in 1948 as India's first PSU to be established after independence, is a remarkable. After facing many ups and downs, what has been your experience in rebuilding the organization, faith in the people, and its business competitiveness? Can you elaborate on that?
Thank you very much, and for putting the question, which is very, very close to my heart. Just let me introduce myself again. Actually, I was the Deputy Director General in the Department of Telecommunications till 2018. I am an Indian Telecom Service Officer of 1986 batch. So one day I got a call from the Secretary Office that you have been transferred from DDG NT to DDG SU. So basically, SU is the service unit responsible for maintaining and coordinating with the PSUs of the Department of Telecom. So ITI was one of them. So I was given the task by the secretary, the then secretary, to close it down. It is a matter in the month of August 2018. So I was called by the secretary and the minister that you need to close down the ITI in the shortest possible time. Then I was taken aback, sir, once you have called me and you have given the responsibility, though I want to revive it, not close it down. So yes, then I talked to all the stakeholders, including the then CMD and the directors and the other stakeholders, including unions and the down the level officials in the ITI itself. And then after talking to them, I came to one conclusion. Each and everybody is having a great potential in them. Individually, they are excellent. Individually, they are doing very good job. But collectively, somehow, they are failing. And yes, they were not having belief in themselves. Then I tried to find out the reason why they have failed. So then, yes, as I told you in my initial remarks itself, earlier, it was the cost plus some profit type of the working, and I think each and every PSU was given that type of mandate after the independent got we got the independence in 50s, and from 50s till late 90s when the MNCs came into the market, Indian market. So IT was having a complete monopoly, and they were having complete freedom of having the certain profits. But once they have to face tough competition with the MNCs. And yes, BSNL was also carved out from the Department of Telecommunications. So they have to even face the to take the orders even from the BSNL, which was their own department. They need to face the tough competition and they need to go through the this tender process. So then in 2002 itself and till 2015-16 itself, again they went down. So when I tried to what is the source, why we cannot be competitive again, then we started working key. Yes, we need to work on the incremental cost basis. We need to do it so that at least we may be competitive while addressing the different tenders. Earlier they were giving all the cost while addressing the different tenders. So then from here itself we change the strategy. From the DOT headquarters itself, I tried to change the strategy of the ITI. I tried to micromanage the ITI from the DOT headquarters itself, and we tried to how to cut down the cost, how to bring down the electricity bills, how to voluntarily tell the officials, and how to address the tenders. And now all those things work very well. So we just simply cut down our operational expenditure. We address the tenders very, very cleverly, and so that now we do have more than 12,000 crore plus order book. And definitely from 2016-17, we started again putting a lot of money into the manufacturing stuff. Because earlier they used to say that the PSUs can never be efficient. But now I say we have put in a lot of money in the optical fiber, SDB pipe, solar panel, Wi-Fi, even encryption equipments, every type of the equipment which a telecom industry requires, we started manufacturing, and we started participating in the this EPC projects being floated by the BVNL USO fund of the Department of Telecommunications itself. Earlier, we were giving the projects on back-to-back basis to some other back-end partners. After in 2018, then I joined as a director marketing after leaving the DOT, because I said to my secretary, I cannot run the department IT from the DOT headquarters. I have to come to this headquarters. And then, of course, finally, when I took as a charge of CMD in 2019 itself, then we completely changed the strategy of the project management and project execution. Now, ITI is completely doing the complete project management in itself. That is bringing a good margin. Earlier, we were getting only 5-6% margin on the projects. Now we are getting 18 to 20% margin on the projects. And our persons are also trained. We adopted all the new technologies. Now we are going in very big way on the cloud computing and of course security operation centers and all the latest technologies. Now we have started working on the 4G and 5G also. So I would say optimization of the cost, addressing the tenders right from the zero budgeting cost, and then our tender winning rate is now around 30 to 35% in open market, and we are now competing with all the best industries in India. Right now, we have won our ESCON project, which is the Army Strategic Communication Network project of the Defense Services. That is 8,000 crore project against the Railtel, Sterlite, and of course this L&T also. So I think I will say this industry was sick for the last more than 20 years, and nobody was believing can be turned around. And I was given the job to turn around, but then I took the time of the 6 months time from my secretary and the honorable minister, and they gave this much time. And then I was having full faith in myself, in my team, and that is the reason why we could do it. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity of sharing my thoughts on this.
Wonderful, sir. Wonderful, sir. Sir, Mr. Mukesh Kumar Surana, sir. India, which imports 82% of its oil needs, has ambitious plans to bring down imports to 67% by 2022. That means 15%. Replacing it with the local exploration, renewable energy, indigenous ethanol fuel. In your view, how India can achieve this, and what kind of resources, capabilities are needed?
That's a very important question for the country as a whole, not only for us who are there in the energy business, I will put not only in the oil business. So Prime Minister has set up a very ambitious target to reduce the total imports, and especially realizing that a majority of our import bill is contributed by the oil imports. And of late, there has been great focus on finding the alternate sources of energy, which included renewables, which included biofuels, which included alternate fuels, I will put it, which includes hydrogen, etc., etc. Now, if just to give you a few pointers, sometime back, you might be knowing that there is a mandate to blend ethanol in petrol up to 10%, so that we can use the bioproducts which are generated out of, let's say, sugarcane or agri-waste, etc., which is not only more environmental friendly, but it also will reduce the import bills. Till some time back, let's say 2 years back or so, we were hardly able to achieve a blend of even 1%, 2%. In last year and last to last year, there was extreme focus on that, because one of the reasons that how do you get the ethanol which is required for blending. And in that, the whole, all the people who are involved, whether it is the companies, whether it is the private sector, whether it is the bureaucracy, whether it is a polity, the decision maker, policy makers, and from various ministries, whether it is Ministry of Petroleum, Ministry of Road Transport, Ministry of Sugar, Food, Fertilizer, everybody has put together their thoughts, how do we increase the production of ethanol in the country? And a lot of policy decisions were brought in. alternate sources of making ethanol was brought. Earlier, only sugarcane was used for making ethanol. Now we are using grains, waste, the rotten grains, the surplus grain, maize, rice, even agri waste, 2G ethanol, 1G ethanol. All that has been brought in, and we have been able to take this percentage to a blend all over India basis. I'm saying almost around 8%. And that is a tremendous achievement on the country's part to reach an 8% blend ratio in MS with constant efforts. And there's a plan to raise it to 10% and subsequently to 20%. Similarly, earlier, the gas penetration in the country was very low. And then CNG was brought in, PNG was brought in, and now compressed biogas has been brought into the picture. And there are a lot of new compressed biogas plants. The interest subvention scheme has been brought in. The private entrepreneurs are being encouraged. The oil marketing companies are giving an offtake guarantee if somebody is willing to produce gas or ethanol. There are prices have been declared. There are long-term arrangements to ensure that the people can get the funding from the banks. This is one example where you can. A lot of efforts have been made to move towards reducing our import bills. It is not only to reduce import bill, but it helps in multiple ways in the sense that it will help in improving the environment, it will reduce the carbon footprint of the country. It will help in improving more money flow within the agricultural setup where we're not only depending on the crops, but alternate sources of income from that. So there are multiple uses of that. For example, all the refineries now, the new refineries coming with the petrochemical integration so that your margins are better. The risks are lesser if tomorrow there is a disruption in the transportation fuel arena. All the old refineries are being integrated to put in the petrochemical plants. It not only reduces the import of the petrochemical in the country, but it also improves the margins of the profitability of the refinery. So I will put it that way that it's not one day affair that you can reduce the bill 82%, so you won't come down to zero, because oil continues to be a major part of the total energy basket. And irrespective of all the alternate sources which we are talking about, it may take a part of the incremental resources which are required. But oil will continue to be a major part. And so we need to find out alternate ways while we use the oil which is there more efficiently. Each molecule will be applied to the best possible use, and find the alternate resources. So LPG may get replaced by, let's say, the PNG or the natural gases or CBG to some extent. MS may have ethanol blend. Diesel may have the biofuel blend in that. And this is the way the country is coming right now. Renewables, hydrogen, these are all the additional part of it, solar, wind, etc.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Abhay Kumar Singh ji, the year 2019 and 20 financial years appear to be the best performing year for NHPC in terms of energy generation and also net profit in the history of the organization since 1975. Whom do you give the credit to, sir?
Basically, it is a teamwork. And the corporation was formed in 1975. And since then, we are totally new. And after passing the time, we gained the experience. We had only not even a single power station in operation when the NHPC was formed. Since then, we have already 24 power stations working at the present. And we have learned a lot during the maintenance, running of the projects. So all these are teamwork. All the things that we have something in the dam, then for the headless tunnel, then the powerhouse, civil parts, mechanical, hydromechanical parts, then the maintenance team are required for the electromechanical. We have learned a lot, and with the passage of time, we have got a lot of experience, and we have the very high team in all these disciplines, and they know the subject. They know how to run the machine, how to maintain the machine. So our availability of the machine is very utmost during the monsoon period, because most of the power is generated during the monsoon, say from the June, May, 15th of May to September, October, the 15th of sometime end of the October. So during this period, how we can maintain our machines and make the machines available for the generation. So this area has been seen by the NHPC and our very strong team at all the power stations. Then we have the control from the head office. We have a random team with in daily interaction with all the power stations. This has resulted in a good profit and good generation. Then that is resulting in a good profit And at the same time, whatever the construction projects were there, we have tried to complete in time. You know, when we landed in any of the remote area, we get the challenge from the day one. The first stakeholder, local people, then forest, environment, pollution, tribal area are mostly there where we're making the project. So they are not much educated. So some NGOs come in the picture. So all the stakeholder, we are trying to convince them to make them to visit to different places, how the benefit has been given by the hydropower to the local area in particular and the state in general. So those things have worked with NHPC. We have the very high respect now in the areas where we are running the power station. So these are the things to club together. The passage of time, the things has improved. Now NHPC had though only 7,071 megawatt capacity, but at the same time, we are working at around more than 5,000 megawatt. These all the power stations going to be completed in 3-4 years of time only. They're starting from the 22nd, 2022, then by 25-26, so all this power station will be completed. Now almost of the same amount, say 5,000 megawatt in the pipeline, which may be completed by 2030. These are the minimum power hydropower project. So these are the things we have great teamwork, great knowledge with experience. We have the learning process. We have the failure and success also. We have the story of both. And with this, all this data bank, we are working at the power station and we are getting the profit. This is the basic mantra for our NHPC.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Over to Mr. Ravinder Singh Dhillon. Sir, Government of India announced an outlay of 3 lakh plus crore for a revamped reform scheme for struggling state power discoms in India. The scheme will aid discoms for infrastructure creation, including prepaids, smart metering, feeds, separation, upgradation of systems tied to financial improvements. As you are India's largest NBFC and infrastructure finance organization, how do you see your role in this scheme, if at all?
Government of India had announced this scheme.
Yes.
The new revamped scheme. This is basically a reform-linked financial package which will be given to the states, and the states will decide what category of these system strengthening they want to do. And one is this will be linked to the reforms. So reforms are very much needed in the power sector. The subsidy which is there from the government, the state governments, that is not coming. The state government dues are there which are not coming to the discoms, and they are not able to pay the GenCos, and the GenCos are also getting into the red because the payment is not there. So with that respect, the Government of India has come out with this scheme, and Power Finance Corporation will be, along with REC, will be one of the nodal agencies for this. Lot of stress has been made in this scheme with respect to the smart meters and smart prepaid meters. So we think that installing of these meters at the consumer, we will be getting, the discounts will be getting the revenue upfront, like a prepaid telephone connection is there. So similarly, a prepaid thing will be there for electricity also. And whenever a consumer thinks that his charge is getting out, he can recharge it. And for a low income group, whenever he has the money, he can charge that. If he has 200 rupees, he can go and charge for 200 rupees. If he has more, then he can accordingly charge, and he will come to know how much the consumption is there. So this is a very big technological intervention which is there in the new revamped scheme.
Okay.
And a lot of the infrastructure is also required to be developed. We have to reduce the losses. The AT&C losses are at 22%, 22%, the average throughout the country. That has to be reduced. So we are targeting that it will be reduced to 15%. For that, some infrastructure is required to be developed at the distribution sector. So that will be done, and that will depend on the states. They themselves have to come up with which scheme they want to do, and accordingly money will be given to them. So I think this is a way forward. The earlier schemes were not targeting so much the reforms area. So this scheme will be targeting more of the reform. And we think that the financial viability of the distribution sector, because all the money is coming in the distribution side, and ultimately the distribution companies pay to the this Gencos and the Transcos, and their financial health will also improve. So I think this is a good scheme which we have. Government of India is it is being finalized. It has been put up to the cabinet and should be done soon.
Thank you, Mr. Ravinder. Over to Mr. Sarvesh Singh. Sir, you are leading telecom infrastructure organization set up by the Department of Telecommunication for the establishment, management, and operations of the National Optical Fiber Network to provide a minimum 100 Mbps broadband connectivity to all the Gram Panchayats in the country, covering nearly 6 lakh plus villages to improve telecommunications in India. In terms of implementation, sir, of the world's largest rural broadband connectivity program built under the Make in India initiative right now, with no involvement of foreign companies, how tough it is for you?
It's a BharatNet project is a very ambitious project of Government of India. It's a very important project also, that it's the backbone of Digital India actually. Under BharatNet, I mean, just for the benefit of others also, under BharatNet, we are laying optical fiber, primarily optical fiber cable. We are providing connectivity to all the 2.5 lakh Gram Panchayats of the country, primarily using the optical fiber cable, because through OFC only we can provide the right type of bandwidth. It has a, the media, OFC has unlimited bandwidth sort of. And now the project is to be extended beyond the Gram Panchayats up to the villages. So it is something like 6.4 lakh villages overall, including the Gram Panchayats, for which to reach up to the villages, it's an announcement by the Prime Minister, which has been done. And after requisite approvals and all, we'll be going ahead. But for the time being, we are connecting the Gram Panchayats, and we have almost like 60% of the Gram Panchayats we have connected. Connected means that now the broadband though they have been connected, and through optical fiber and maybe some other media also, and the services can be provided. Now it's a tough in the sense that it's a 2.5 lakh Gram Panchayats. When you talk about it, is to each nook and corner of the country is so widely dispersed. So that is the major this thing. Many of the Gram Panchayats are in such areas where it's a hilly terrain. Many of them are in the Naxalite prone, those sort of areas also. So forest areas. So there are many tribal areas. So it's just because the mega projects is widely dispersed, so it's really a challenge, and different type of terrains and all. Then when you're executing work in the complete country, there are multiple agents where you have got limited contractors of quality. The same type of contract. Suppose I award the work to HFCL in Punjab, and similarly HFCL also doing work in say Jharkhand. Then what happens? Actually, what happens is that till he is doing or keeping fast or doing the work in Punjab, the work in Jharkhand will be pretty slow. And when only he completes the work and all, then the resources get transferred to this thing and all. So when you executing the work completely throughout the country, then you have limited contractors of quality contractors who can really do the work at the same time at all the places and all. Then the third thing which was a challenge was the ROW permissions. So ROW for BharatNet, the permission which has been given by the state government, we have got free ROW. So as far as state governments are concerned, in the states, there is no permission is required. But from the national this thing, we need to take permission from the railways, we need to take permission from the defense, from the forest, from NHAI and other places. So, ROW permissions many times, especially with the defense and forest, railways is little better, but defense and forest, it takes a lot of time and all. So these ROW permissions, so mega project dispersed across this thing and all these are major challenges. Then, BBNL, who is executing this BharatNet project, is a very small organization, and we have got different models through which we execute. We have got initial in phase 1, we tried to tie up with the 3 CPSUs. Largely the work was given to BSNL, and there was There was PGCIL and there was Railtel who were doing the work for us, largely the BSNL. But then after in phase 1, seeing the difficulties, various these things and all, in phase 2, we adopted different models where we utilized the multiple states also who were willing to do the work. So through states also we're doing the work. Now states, when they're doing the work, the challenge is that whenever there's a change in bureaucracy, whenever there's a change in the government in the states, in Andhra, my work is stopped for the last 2 years. Nothing has moved. Tamil Nadu, the work was almost going to start with the contracts to be signed. Now there's a change of government. We don't know what will happen actually. So, it's a mega project of such a nature being done. So with this thing, now it's very short time to explain to you about BharatNet. But yes, it's a challenge. And those challenges, we have taken various measures and all. One of the major challenge was that whatever we had commissioned actually, say 60% of the network, lot of fiber and all got damaged, large scale damages and all took place. Because of that, the Gram Panchayats which were connected also, they were down actually. But in the last 2 years, we took a lot of measures. And now, if I see my NOC now, Network Operating Center through which I monitor my Gram Panchayats, as of now, my 95,000 Gram Panchayats are up and running on the NOC. Though I have connected 1.6 lakh Gram Panchayats, but at least 95,000 are up and running. Then we have got utilization also. We have provided 5 lakh FTTH connections in the last 1 year almost. Now 5 lakh FTTH connections largely to the government institutions in the Gram Panchayats through which we have done the utilization. So utilization has picked up a lot. We have provided in almost 1 lakh Gram Panchayats FTTH connections and Wi-Fi has been provided. So broadband has been provided these Gram Panchayats. So almost 1 lakh Gram Panchayat utilization is there. My network is up and running. Availability is better. And connectivity almost 60% has been provided. So we are doing the work. Hopefully, we'll try to reach. The target is to reach almost connect 2 lakh Gram Panchayats by in the next financial year. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir. Over to Mr. Sanjeev Kumar Lohia. Sir, your organization IRDC is a special purpose vehicle and is a joint venture company of Rail Land Development Authority, RIDES, and IRCON International Limited. Your one of the objective is to develop and redevelop the existing or new railway stations. The 8.5 lakh crore railway infrastructure modernization plan in India, you are also one of the key stakeholders, and you also roped in one of the top global consulting firms to prepare a business plan and also for the station modernization. What is the status of station modernization in the recent past, if you can highlight?
As I mentioned, we have completed 2 stations, which was hitherto considered impossible for last about 20-25 years because this was in the offing. So now we are working on a total of 123 stations, RLDA and IRSDC together. We are working on 63 stations. RLDA is working on 61 stations. So of 8,600 plus stations in the country, there are A and A1 category stations as per the earlier classification, which have higher footfalls. So they have been prioritized. There are about 400 odd stations. So out of that, as per the report prepared by Messrs. BCG, who are appointed as the strategic advisor, so they identified the stations which can be taken up first. So we are working on those 123 stations. Total investment envisaged there is about 50,000 crores, including station development and the real estate development which will happen. The funding mechanism for this earlier was only and only real estate and a bit amount of, I would say, station revenue from station operations, which is advertisement, parking, the platform tickets, and the kiosk stalls, etc. The group of secretaries which has been constituted by Ministry of Railways under the chairmanship of CEO Niti Aayog has approved user charges also as one of a major funding source for the station redevelopment, which brings in a lot of, I would say, financial certainty for the investors for the return on their investment. So with that, the participation has increased. The user charges are about to be notified by the Ministry of Railways. So as soon as they are notified, then we will be going ahead with the issue of RFPs. We have already invited RFQs for about 10 stations. Total 50 stations are targeted for invitation of RFQ by this year end. Of course, the pandemic has hit the progress a bit, but we are working on that, and we hope that by 2021-22, we should be able to award about 50 stations.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, my last question over to Mr. Rakesh Mohan Agarwal. Sir, despite the COVID-19 pandemic, you performed better in last financial year. You are expecting 25 to 30% growth for the next 3 financial years as well. What are your key drivers for growth? And as today you offer a complete range of telecom products, and your priorities, and how do you deal with your debts, if any? Over to you.
So basically, as earlier we were the only manufacturing company. So in the last decade, we have transferred from manufacturing to this service company as well. Now we are running we are being called a technology company as well. So our majority of the revenue in the last 3 years is coming from this project side. So mainly we are doing the defense projects, telecom projects, and of course smart city projects. So yes, because as I told you during my last questions reply, we are aggressively participating in all the tenders by the state government, central government, and even in the private sectors. So yes, we are doing the major projects of the BharatNet as conveyed by Mr. Sarvesh Singh, the CMD BPNL. So we are very aggressive in doing those projects, and we are doing in 4 states of Maharashtra, Gujarat, and of course Andaman and Nicobar and Tamil Nadu. As he said, we are already awarded the work, but yes, LOI has been again stopped. So we expect it will be given to us. So major revenue is coming from these projects. Similarly, in the defense, so majority of the revenue in this financial year, in the next 3 financial year, will come from our recently awarded project of the defense. And yes, first time we have taken the project from the private operators also through a very, very competitive bidding, Airtel, for the FTTH connections in the urban and the national fiber as well. So that is the majority of our revenue. And of course, now we are playing in a very big way for the manufacturing of our products. Whatever products are being used in these projects, main supply is from our own products. So that is the key to our success as well, because we are not dependent on any outside suppliers. And of course, the cost is also optimized. That is the second thing. And of course, recently we have started our data center, which is not only providing services to the state government and of course to the definitely other banks also. And yes, security operations center is a new thing which we are going to start very shortly. So security operations center along with the data center is a key to success and is requirement of the time for not only for the governmentals but all the private and the public sectors as well. So all these initiatives together, when one thing is not there, other thing is there, other thing not there, the third thing is there. So overall, we are seeing our revenue in the 2018-19, it was around 17-18. Now this financial year, though results are not declared, but definitely we expect, as you rightly said, this much growth we expect. And in the future, definitely we are expecting this much future growth. But definitely this year has been very tough year. This last financial year for the revenue as well as the profitability. But somehow we could maintain those figures. So it is a very challenging time, and because we are the manufacturing company and telecom manufacturing is dependent on so many components, and the supply chain is the very big problem in nowadays time. So that is why we are mainly relying on as a technology company and on the projects as well during this COVID period. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Over to Mr. Mukesh Kumar Surana. Sir, did you ever witness reducing for petroleum products like before? How is the demand for LPG market from domestic now? Has your board discussed the scenario and alternative strategies currently?
In fact, the last year had been a year where there would not have been a day where we have not discussed that what is the next thing to come, because we operate in a business where the demand is for an essential commodity, let's say like LPG. So more the people were home, the more was the demand of LPG. But the second side for products like petrol and diesel, there was a diminishing requirement because the people were not there in the field. And in a refinery, you can't just make LPG, you have to make petrol also. The challenges which we had was that how much to produce and where to keep, because this is not a commodity you can just store or something or for a long time. And second, if you are not to produce, then whether to buy the crude or not buy the crude, because there is a limitation on the logistic, there is a supply chain issues, there are storage facilities, but at the same time, you have to ensure that what the people need is available. And so at various levels, we had a constant interaction and the discussion, and the calls were taken from time to time. And in this business, you have to take a call whether you want to buy crude or not 2 months ahead for the crude which you need 2 months later. And if you want to make the product reach to the end point, let's say some part of the country, then it has to travel all the places by the pipeline or the roll or the rate or something. Coming specifically to the LPG, in fact, the LPG demand was higher. Even the last year, during the lockup time, actually the demand was almost 10% higher than what we have normally before the lockdown also. But the petroleum products was one time in April came down almost to 50%, then it gradually came up, then there was a smart recovery, we almost came to 90% of the demand. Last month, again, we saw a dip because of the various local lockdowns are there.
Thank you, sir. Over to Mr. Ravindra Singh Dhillon. Sir, you have been providing financial assistance to power projects. Recently, you have forayed into financing of other projects which have backward linkages to the power sector like coal mine development, fuel transportation, and oil and gas pipelines. As part of your core business, what expertise you bring to the table of your clients and partners apart from finance?
So we are mostly financing power sector. So we have decided as a diversification to finance allied sectors to the power. And we have decided that we will be doing renewable energy in a big way. And during the last few years, we have increased our portfolio of renewable energy. And then with respect to the equipment manufacturing also, we have decided that we will be funding equipment manufacturing also. We have decided that solar module manufacturing and wind turbine manufacturing also we will support. And the new thing which is coming up is the electric vehicles. So in the next board meeting, we are going to take a proposal for funding electric vehicles. And the charging infrastructure which is required for the electric vehicles, that also we want to support. And going forward, I think this energy storage, the batteries are going to come in a big way, and Government of India is also supporting equipment manufacturing with respect to the these batteries. So we would like to support the electric vehicles and as well as the storage also. And recently we had done a scheme for pump storage scheme, in which during the daytime when the renewable energy, the solar energy is available, we pump the water up in the up reservoir, and during the morning and the evening peak, that can be utilized for meeting the peak during that time. So these are the areas in which we are diversifying, and basically also we are refinancing proposals we are taking to our for our customers. And for the state utilities, we are always there to finance their generation proposals, their transmission and distribution, which is required to evacuate the power. And we have given special emphasis for transmission projects which tend to evacuate the power which is being generated in the renewable, because renewable is mostly located in solar in Gujarat, in MP, Maharashtra, and most of it is in Rajasthan. So evacuation of this energy is required. So we are helping in funding these projects also.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Mukesh, sir, I think you would like to add something on electrical charger. I think you, HPCL also doing pilot on that initiative.
Yeah, that's true. We are, because these are the newer form of the energy resources which are coming in the picture. And as I mentioned to you that we need to utilize or explore or exploit all forms of energy for a country like ours, where the demand is ever growing. And we are also have set up the facility and on around 57 of our petrol pumps to provide the charging facility in various modes, whether it is the battery swapping, battery charging, etc. In some cases, we also experimented with the startups where the new model of charging has also come up, and some of them is also very widely appreciated.
Okay.
And going forward, we will continue to do it on more and more of our petrol stations. And in future, all new petrol pumps will have some alternate forms of energy resources, whether in form of CNG, whether in form of EV or CBG or those type of things.
Thank you, sir. Over to Mr. Abhay Kumar Singh. Sir, you have a clear vision. You have a very clear vision for NHPC and want to make it one of the most prestigious organizations in power sector, which is ready for challenges and opportunities, not only in hydro, but also in solar and wind, and double install capacity in the next 5 years. Which are your best practices, sir, and best technologies to meet your plans?
For any hydropower project, challenges are different. We have, I told you, more than 24 power stations, and every power station is something different type of challenges. The geological challenges, working in the river bed, the discharge is very high, very high. So we used to make the coffer dam. So many things are there. The best challenges we have that a very strong design team, and with the passage of time we had able to learn right from the concept to commissioning. Rather, we are giving the consultancy to the other people also. We have given one consultancy project in the Bhutan, 700 megawatt Mangdeju project, with all the design, making the DPR, everything was done by NHPC. We have not grown up like this. We are taking a lot of projects in JNK with a joint venture. We are doing the design for them. We are not hiring any consultant for hydropower projects. So this design, civil design team, similarly the geological team, we are doing the geology and have the different type of methodology for knowing the underground geology. And we are providing this facility to other power PSU also, like Tehri, Satluj. And the people are, whenever they are in problem, they come to us only because of have very strong this thing. Then the monitoring is the other part. It is a real-time monitoring. We're doing all the monitoring on the Primavera with integrated schedule and what the challenges is there and the decision making on the real-time basis. We facilitate such in taking the decision. If any delays here, who is at fault? Either we are the fault, the contractor's fault, or some other stakeholder disturbing the things there. It all come on the daily ERP and it's been captured. And what is the decision required to be taken? We take the support from the government. And at present, the government of India, particularly the power ministry, and a very regular meeting for the capex and the other issues. And now the whole state, Ministry of Power, and we as a developer on the one platform. And where the more challenges are there, the things are put up in the Pragati portal, where Honorable Prime Minister himself takes a meeting and resolves the issue. When you go to the Pragati portal, when the next meeting comes, before that the things are being resolved. So now this is the way we are getting the support. And the strength in NHPC is for all the things that clearances, environment, this geological, this designing, operations. We are modernizing the powerhouses, also putting this SCADA in the latest technology. So all things are now with NHPC. And so there is no problem with doing anything in NHPC. We have a very bright future. We have a lot of projects in pipeline, in Arunachal also. In JNK, we have some letter of exchange with the Nepal also. Unfortunately, we have signed last year, but due to the COVID, we couldn't do anything. So things are good for NHPC now.
Thank you very much, sir. So over to Mr. Sarvesh Singh. Sir, what are your priorities for this current financial year as far as BharatNet project is concerned?
BharatNet is still in the still in the construction phase, I would say, because we have connected only 60% of the Gram Panchayats. So obviously the construction part or the connectivity part will go on. And this year, from 1.6 lakh Gram Panchayats, we want to reach up till 2 lakh Gram Panchayats, which is almost double what we had done last year. But that is what we are targeting for. So that is one of the priorities. Second is, I think the priority which is more is the utilization part, you know. So whatever we have connected, the Gram Panchayats which we have connected, it's important that the broadband which is already existing, once connectivity means the broadband can be extended up till there. So as far as BBNL is concerned, or BharatNet is there, it's a middle mile infrastructure, which when we create, after creation, we give it to the service providers. Service providers have to come forward, take the bandwidth and all, and provide the services. It has been decided to go PPP way. So BharatNet now will, in almost 16 states, we are going for a PPP model, where, you know, utilization is always a challenge for the government. Doing utilization and commercial things and all is all for anybody. I mean, government institutions is a challenge. So government organizations. So we are going for the PPP way, where we'll give the BharatNet in almost 16 select states for the time being on a long-term lease to the service providers who can create the balanced network in those states, upgrade the network from the existing say linear model to the ring model and all, ring architecture, where the availability will be better, and then give the commercial connections and all, take the connectivity up to the villages beyond the Gram Panchayats and give the connection. So, and it will be a long-term lease for 30 years, you know. So that is the thing what we are in the next year, that rollout of the PPP is one thing which will also be a priority for BBNL. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Over to Mr. Sanjeev Kumar Lohia. So tell us about your special powers that your organization carries, and what are your priorities for the current financial year?
I think very, very important topic which you have touched. When we had been doing road shows abroad, so one of the major concerns of the investors was the approvals process. The government has facilitated and has granted us the powers of being a special planning authority. So we can approve the plans, the layout plans and the building plans under the Railway Act Section 11. And that we have been doing for various projects, namely Habibganj we have approved. For Gandhinagar, the hotel and the station which has been developed, so the plans have been approved by us. In Delhi, Safdarjung, that plan has been approved by us. Ajni, which is being done by RLDA and MORTH, that plan has been approved by us. In Chandigarh, the layout plan was earlier approved by the Administrator Chandigarh, but the amendments to that after the powers have been given by Union Cabinet to us, so has been done by us. So this has now been established, and we are signing MOUs with the state government. So we already signed MOU with the government of Haryana, and other governments are following. We have already set up high power committees in some of these states so that various policy level decisions and the coordination issues can be addressed. Because IRSDC has been made as the nodal agency for entire station development in the country. So essentially, we are trying to make a highway so that various projects, they can be taken up in an assembly line mode. So the model concession agreement has almost been finalized. So all the facilitation which is required, that we are doing. We have also come up with new models. We have in fact taken up a new model of integrated station facility management. So the stations which are not about to be developed in near future, so we are taking over those stations from railways and we are operating those stations. So the aim is low cost, high impact items through which we can change the customer experience. So 5 stations we are already operating, and 90 more the government has decided to entrust to us. So they will be taken up on PPP. So that will be a new business vertical. We are promoting innovations at our stations. We are also tying up with the Prime Minister Innovation Council. So various innovations, startup ideas. So we are trying to start them at our railway stations. So we not only make money from air, we also make water from air. So that was our tagline when we installed the first atmospheric water generator at Hyderabad. So number of such initiatives we are taking so that we can plug in all the Government of India schemes at our redeveloped stations.
With this, I conclude today's panel discussion, CMD's Roundtable, Building Global and Business Competitiveness, part of the second edition of National PSU Virtual Summit 2021. On behalf of ET Government, I sincerely thank our guest panelists, Mr. Rakesh Mohan Agrawal, CMD ITI Limited, Mr. Mukesh Kumar Surana, CMD Hindustan Petroleum Corporation Limited, Mr. Abhay Kumar Singh, CMD NHPC Limited, Mr. Ravinder Singh Dhillon, CMD Power Finance Corporation Limited, Mr. Sarvesh Singh, CMD Bharat Broadband Network Limited, Mr. S.K. Lohia, MD and CEO of Indian Railway Station Development Corporation Limited. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with ET Government, sir.
Thank you everyone for detailed discussion and your valuable inputs. Stay tuned for the next session.